Hello everyone out there, just give me a moment just to make sure we have the audio. Perfect. Well, just to make sure we have the audio. It's a little bit of an echo, but I think we can deal with this. Hello everyone out there on the interwebs. My name is Side Pocket. That's what people refer to me on the interwebs. I'm one of the two co-founders of DEFCON 201. We are a computer hacker and maker group out of New Jersey, mainly Jersey City, New Jersey, in the Hudson County area. We meet third Friday every month at this amazing sandwich shop called Subculture, which is gradually reopening, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But if you want to know more about us, you can go to our website at defcon201.org. We also have a Twitter at defcon201nj, and we're pretty much on defcon201 on most things, including Instagram and GitHub and stuff like that. Wow, you can really hear the fan on this machine kicking in. I just realized that. So, we're doing this live stream because unfortunately, and I'm not going to get into too much detail, but unfortunately due to, and actually before we do that, I should have did this first. I apologize. We're actually going to go live on our Instagram. Yep, we're going to go live on our Instagram. I just want to double check to make sure that we are properly logged in. So let's see, I reverse that, and then we're going to go live, and then bam, that should start it. There we go. Hello everyone out there on Instagram. I'm going to put this in this box and hope that it holds up for the most part. Yeah, it mostly holds up as long as I lean back. This is, once again, for the people on Instagram right now, this is Side Pocket. Because of the way this box is, because I don't know where my other stand for the cell phone went, I won't be able to see what you guys are typing or if you're waving to me or not, so unfortunately I won't be able to wave back at you during this stream. But, as I said, I'm one of the two co-founders, let's do some hydration. One of the two co-founders of DEFCON 201. I hope you guys can hear me out there on Instagram. We normally meet third Friday of a month. If you're following us, you probably know the shindig by now. And if you want to know more about us, you can go to DEFCON, that's DEFCON 201.org. So, we're doing this live stream because, unfortunately, I'm not going to get into too much detail, but NCOMMANDER, who normally does an amazing show almost every Wednesday or every other Wednesday called HACK ALT NCOMMANDER, was unable to do the streaming today. Hopefully we'll be able to get him next week. I actually hope he shows up tomorrow to help out with Jack's stream, and I want to address that. I know for the past like 2 streams, including Masters of Unlocking, that we have been unfortunately missing our stream deadlines, and basically I'm just having a really bad week. I know there's a thing about streaming that I've read up on, which is that due to the way the algorithms work, also just as a courtesy to like your audience here, that when you say that you're going to stream on this day at 8, you can kind of be a little late. You can show up at like 8:10, 8:30, but you should always stream on the day that you're streaming. And unfortunately, the past 2 episodes, including today's episode, we've been missing days. And as I can see already with the view counter metric, that is going to horrifically screw with our, like, how do you call it? It horrifically screws up our entire metrics on how we do the live stream. You folks, I know you don't know when we're going to live stream now, and that, you know, we will say that we'll live stream, but we might not actually show up on the live stream, and that's the fan kicking in if you hear that. And so I just want to apologize that we've been seemingly missing like different days. And I will say though that tomorrow's show, Archvile Linux Perspective, which is run by our co-founder G.I. Jack, that will be happening at 7 p.m. Like, I don't want to jinx it, but unless like a meteorite hits this building, he will be there on the live stream. It's just, there was a legit emergency where NCOMMANDER couldn't stream. I'm going to take the L for Masters of Unlocking not being streamed on Sunday. I originally was going to do a whole pre-show thing, and again, I don't want to get into details because I don't want to do drama, but basically, I guess, I didn't put my foot down hard enough on certain things, and various people who were assisting me, I apparently didn't get like the memo on like how I wanted to do this and why this would be good for all of us, including you folks out there who watch the stream. So ultimately, because it's my show, it's my fault, so I will take the L for that. The next Master of Unlocking is going to be completely normal. I might not be in this apartment today. I'm trying to adjust this camera. I might not be in this apartment in order to do that stream. I might be in a different apartment when we do Masters of Unlocking. And what day is actually that going to be on? That's going to be 3 days after a meeting, so on the 20th. So on the 20th, I might be at a friend's apartment. Regardless, I pretty much know what the theme is, which is we're going to be decoding locks on there. Also, this Saturday, which I guarantee I'm going to make also, and again, we're not going to be skipping out after this, is Crypto Barons. And I'm trying to set up now. The theme for that episode is we're going to look at one of my favorite dark nets and decentralized deep web internet networks known as ZeroNet, which uses an interesting combination of blockchain and like blockchain technology and torrenting technologies in order to make a completely decentralized local area, pretty secure in baseline stuff type of darknet, very censorship resistant. So I'm trying to set all that up for this Saturday. But let's focus on now, because I'm going to get into some announcements, and then we're going to watch 2 cool videos in lieu of NCOMMANDER not being on. for the stream. Also, because I forgot to look this up, actually, let me look this up right now. I was going to also use the U of tubes to see, let's see if anything pops up. Okay, so this is kind of neat. Okay, this is cool. Give me one moment here. Let's see. I think this is it. Yeah, it's gonna be. I'm gonna get a lot of. What the? No. What did it just do? Ah, jeez, I hate when that happens. Also, just to, Jesus. Also, just to note out there. Oh boy, this is gonna be difficult. You know what? I'm just gonna do this in browser. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna open up a new browser window. Because I normally have all these files locally, but this is actually going to be the only one we're going to do in browser. So I didn't think far ahead enough, and that's going to be that one. But yeah, we're going to go into some cool announcements that we literally just posted on Twitter. We're going to make social media posts later today, and then there's going to be a big update Friday afternoon. And we're going to watch two related videos to that, to those announcements, and this is actually where I'm going to kill the Instagram, because if you want to follow along on Instagram, you can go to DEFCON 201 live on Twitch. You can search for DEFCON 201 on YouTube or DEFCON 201 on DLive. And hi to all you people out there, by the way, on that stream. If you are on any of those services, you can hit that bell or like, share, subscribe to our 3 channels. If you do, we get alerts for them. So if you send us lemons or you follow us on, send lemons to us on DLive, which we really use during Crypto Barons, or you decide to follow us on Instagram, not Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram, but follow us on Twitch TV or YouTube. We now have the ability to look at pop-up notices for all 3 of those services. So we'd love to shout people out. So thank you if you do follow. I'm going to end the Instagram stream here. So if you want to catch up on the news, we're DEFCON 201 live on Twitch TV and DEFCON 201 on DLive and YouTube. So see you there, everyone. Hack the planet. I'm going to wave at these 2. Hack the planet. So I just realized I partly screwed that up, but let's get into the meat and potatoes of this stuff, because again, I wasn't expecting to stream today. I sound like a repeat from Monday, but let's make this late night streaming session really fun. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up the browser, which is somewhere on here. I hate this. There we go. So. And actually, before we put the browser up, let's do our usual shrinkage. For some reason, every time I'm streaming, I have to shrink myself. Well, Jack does it too, but I'm always the one suffering from shrinkage. I think there's cream or pills for that, but let's do this. I have to look up this way. That's the corner, and okay, this should be around that size, and I'm gonna fit into this tiny space up here because I'm really good at fitting into tiny spaces. Let's now bring up the browser and let's surf around. So this is the DEFCON 201 website. Again, you can find us at defcon21.org, which I believe is that URL over here. It's not up on our news section. It's not on anything up but the Twitter at the moment, but we will be making posts about this later today, and we are also going to make an update on Friday afternoon. By the way, I love lurkers, but I want to say hi to everyone in the chat, and if you have a comment or a question, or you have a topic to say about what we're about to talk about, or about hacking or whatever, and there's going to be a cool bonus thing at the end, we're gonna go do that. So yeah, and actually, you know what? Because of that live stream, I'm actually going to discard that live stream because I screwed up there. This is what happens when I don't think. Hopefully, I'm hoping all the bad stuff's happening this week, so that way next week is really good. Hi, Dilcy the Mona. I'm in a different browser window, so it's there's a little bit of a lag, but hello, you're always us here, and I appreciate that even when we're suffering like I am right now. But yeah, this is our website. And let's go over to our Twitter to see the big announcement here. So, our announcement, and we actually have some notifications for this, is we have the details, and we've actually had them for a while, but we confirmed as this trippy gift plays that on September 18th, which is our meeting, again, we meet third Friday of the month, so next Friday on September 18th is our meeting, and it's going to be an Apple-based meeting. Not the food Apple, although we'd probably be eating apples there. But we're going to base our stuff off of Apple's products, whether it's whether it's Macintosh products, iOS, Apple TV, Safari, or Sephardic, depending on who you ask, retro or current or the future stuff. We're covering everything about hacking Apple. And we have a really great lineup of stuff here. I'm actually going to need my phone for this section here, because I'm going to read you some of the previews that haven't been posted yet. Now, the reason why we're announcing this now is because we're still meeting at Subculture. They want us back. It's just New Jersey's gradually reopening back up, to put it in a nutshell, right? Hang on here. Let's try to search for this better, more intelligently. But here we go. There it is. All right, so there we go. So they want us to meet, but basically New Jersey's gradually opening back up, especially Jersey City. It's a lot more. It's almost like outside of the masks and the social distancing, there's so much stuff that's reopened again. Our gyms have reopened again, highway systems, indoor dining, that you almost don't know there's a pandemic going on, which is kind of creepy because everyone is still really cautious, and of course we're afraid of all the other states coming in with the second wave ruining everything. WokeCon Hulu, what the heck is that? So, I did not want to post, because we have an outline schedule of here's the exact times on September 18th where we'll be streaming and you can meet up in person, and then find out that they're actually that Subculture is gonna be open later or stuff. So basically, the next 2 days, they're going to be asking the city and the management, are they still closing at 8 p.m. or are they going to be open up later? And so Friday afternoon, you will actually see our Medium blog post or Right As blog post, another Twitter update, Instagram, just our Onion. Every single thing you're going to see is going to be updated, right? And that will actually have the time scheduling for all the content that we list. We were just so excited that we wanted to, because this is, we have a couple of months up until the end of the year, amazing as people presenting stuff, particularly on the live stream. And so we really were so excited, particularly about this month and next month, that we were like, okay, we can't contain ourselves. We're going to announce all of the details for our meeting today, and then Friday afternoon when Subculture, our venue, contacts us up and be like, yeah, it's the same schedule, or hey, we're actually now open from this time to this time, then I go, good, change some numbers, and then hit mass post, and PR and Reddit and all that stuff gets updated, and that will actually be the time schedule. But I kind of want to go through what we're going to have at that meeting. So every single thing in that meeting, almost every single thing, actually, no, every single thing will be on the live stream. There might be one or two things that you might see in person here when we meet at Subculture, but all of that will still be live streamed. So if you can't make it out to Subculture, you would still be able to, everything's on the stream. In fact, the way it's going to work is that about six people can sit inside Subculture, and on the big screen that we normally have presentations on pre-COVID, we're going to have this live stream on that screen. We'll try to get a big screen maybe for outside, but if not, If you're in the outside dining area, physically there, you can just see it on your phone. And of course, if you can't make it out and you're in New Jersey, or you live in the tri-state area, you can't make it out, you're in another state, in another country, just like with all the past meetings since March, these will all be live streamed, so don't worry. We have really exciting stuff. So there will be a pre-show. It's a little bit of a surprise. You can find it out there, but I think a lot of people don't know about this thing. It's something Apple related that I take to heart. And I think you guys, everyone, really appreciate it. But let's kind of go through what we're gonna see here. So our first speaker is gonna be this awesome guy, Thomas Reed. Actually, I'm gonna bring that website up later. I've encountered most of these people on Objective-C, which is like a whole Mac security fan-run website basically, but I will get into that. But Thomas here is going to have a really cool talk called "The Rise of Mac Malware," and I'm going to read what he wrote, what his talk is going to be about. And again, hi everyone out there. We love lurkers, but if you have any comments about our Mac-themed meetup coming about September 18th, or you have any questions about that meeting that I could properly answer, what I can do, or my crazy hair, or why my t-shirt has like a drunken disabled person on it, and where did I get that from, you are more than happy to ask me in chat. And if you really like this content and you haven't already, you can hit that bell and click like, share, and subscribe on Twitch, DLive, or YouTube. And when you do, I will see notifications for that and cheer you on. So thank you. Oh, here's the box for the phone. Jeez, I don't know, people drive me crazy. So his talk's going to be about the rise of Mac malware. And as he wrote, contrary to most people's expectations, the first widespread virus actually affected Apple computers. Join me for a journey through time as we look at past Mac malware, focusing on what certain behaviors first emerge. Then fast forward through time where we'll see what today's Mac threat landscaping looks like, what behaviors we're seeing of Mac threats in the wild. So to sum it up, basically, he's looking at the past, present, and future of malware on Mac products, and mainly Mac OS. So that's going to be our first talk. I'm really excited about that because he told me some of the malware he's going to bring up and dissect, and that's going to be really cool. You're not going to want to miss that. Our second speaker, and I'm going to bring up his information on my phone right here because everyone keeps sending me different titles, is this awesome dude. He's all the way from Poland. Fun fact about me, I'm actually half Polish. Now, because of that, I don't know if I can pronounce his name correctly. I'm going to attempt to, so... Okay, just bear with me. Wojciech Regula? I think that's how you might pronounce it. I'm going to go see if he has like a video on YouTube and do that. If I mispronounced your name, I am so sorry. But you can kind of see a piece of it here. His talk is going to be called "Abusing and Securing XPC in Mac OS Apps." So we start off with a talk about the past, present, and future of Mac malware, and now Wojciech is going to do a deep dive into a specific security flaw in Mac OS. And as he wrote, XPC is a well-known inter-process communication mechanism used on Apple devices. Abusing XPC leads to many severe bugs, including those used in jailbreaks. While XPC bugs in Apple's components are harder and harder to exploit, did we look at non-Apple apps on macOS? As it turns out, vulnerable apps are everywhere. Antivirus, messengers, privacy tools, firewalls, and more. In this talk, he is going to, 1, explain how XPC, or otherwise known as NSXPC, works. Then he's going to present some of his findings in popular macOS apps, such as using local privilege escalation on apps to access root. Then, number 3 is going to show how you can abuse an interesting feature on the latest version of macOS, Catalina, allowing to inject and unsign dylib, so you can just update your own libraries. And then finally, after he shows all this abuse, he's going to show what he found are proper methods in order to fix all of these exploits. So that's going to be our second talk. And I like when people get super nerded out and go into a deep dive about something. Now, I will mention something about his talk that we negotiated beforehand. He is going to pre-record. He's going to do this like DEFCON safe mode. The previous speaker is going to do this live. he is going to pre-record his talk. It's going to be for us, and we're going to play that video. But during his talk and afterwards, shortly afterwards, he's going to be in the DEFCON 201 chat. We might have him on audio too, but we'll see. And he's going to try to answer all of your questions. So just note, that talk is going to be a pre-recorded talk, but he is going to be in chat during and slightly after the talk in order to make comments on what he spoke about in the video and also to answer your questions. And if it's text only, we're going to read the chat in order to, you know, it properly show up on the stream. So that's our second talk, and so already, like, that would be more than enough in my opinion for a DC201 meeting. Like, normally physically that's all we would have, but F it, we're not just gonna crank this to 11, we're gonna freaking rip the knob off. As you know, we're DC201, we have to twist your knobs. So let's go to the next thing. So the next thing is we have an awesome short talk by Mr. MacWright, otherwise known as Steven. He has a really awesome, that we should actually subscribe to, YouTube channel called Mr. MacWright, and it's him and a bunch of other friends, and these are all people, they like their Macs, but they also like gaming. And instead of, I mean, sometimes he dual boots Windows, but he really goes into Apple's stance or non-stance on gaming, all the different, like he's, from what I understand, his particular talk is going to start with like early Mac gaming of like Apple II games and Marathon and stuff, and then go up to modern day with Apple Arcade, and maybe even a bit about the whole craziness going on between Apple and Epic Games. But it's going to be a whole history and celebration of, yes, Mac, just like the way, yes, Linux people do play video games. There's a lot of them. Yes, there's a lot of people who play games on Apple Macintosh devices, Apple devices, whether it's Mac OS, iOS, or Apple TV. And so he's going to go all into that, and I'm really excited for that. Our next thing is, speaking of NCOMMANDER, so he should be there for our meeting. If not, I think he'll either be there physically or remote in for this. So you may have heard of this crazy thing called Macintosh Js. Basically, a dude managed to take Mac OS 8.1 and just using Java, basically run it in Electron wrapped JavaScript, and it's the entire operating system, and it comes pre-installed with Photoshop 3, Illustrator 5.5, Civilization 2, and of course Oregon Trail. And you can run this basically sort of VM that's not a VM in Windows, Linux, or if you want to be cruel, yo dog, I heard you like Mac OS, so we're going to run your Mac OS and your Mac OS so you can old Mac OS while you new Mac OS. And because NCOMMANDER, as you know, which you would normally do on the show, take apart like particularly old or retro software, especially obscure stuff. Not that nobody remembers Mac 8.1, although maybe there's arguments that people do want to forget that. I honestly don't know, because I'm not the biggest Mac fan, even though I have used them and fixed them before. But he is going to sit down and kind of go over how, you know, not only this, all the intricacies of Mac OS, and particularly Mac OS 8.1, but also how the hell this dude managed to fit it on JavaScript. Fun background, we actually asked the original person who made Macintosh JS if they would like to be on a meeting, and they would absolutely love to. The problem is that despite post-COVID, despite during COVID, that's Freudian slip, I can't wait till it's post-COVID, wear your mask and shoot anyone that doesn't. We don't condone violence on the show, but please. So, what was I getting with here? Hydration, there we go. So, we asked the person who created Macintosh JS if they would like to speak, and they would love to, but despite COVID going on, they're swamped with work, so they really tried, but they couldn't find any scheduling. They couldn't even, like, pop on 5 minutes. I believe that day they're going to be in the middle of a giant, infrastructure business meeting on where they work at, but I said, hey, we have a person who likes to get It's like, oh, NCommander, I've seen his stuff on Windows. Like, sure, I would love to see a dissection of it. So that's what we're gonna do, and hopefully NCommander will feel better and be more awake to do this. Now, the next thing has me really excited because we all know with the iOS, especially now, especially what Apple's going to be doing with their upcoming ARM chips, which is a hell of an itself that we're probably going to bring up at the meeting, that as much as Google is evil, because they are, I would actually argue that basically Google is now what Microsoft was in the 90s and then some, while still being open source. I wish this was alcohol. Or like turpentine or some shit. At least Android is actually open source, so you can fork it, you can make your own versions, you can make it. It's like Firefox, like Mozilla's Firefox, where we can take it and make its own separate version, and we can strip stuff out of it, we'll put things into it, like all that. Whether it's individual people sitting in their basement in Montana or giant corporations, anyone can do that. Apple, everything about Apple is proprietary. They're very much like their rivals, Microsoft, although Microsoft now has open source stuff. And you could debate that there's some things that Mac uses that's open source because it's ultimately based on a Unix-type environment. But still, everything that Apple, especially now, creates is proprietary. And nothing could be more proprietary than iOS and how ridiculously, like, armored that whole thing is. And I also just remembered another video that we could watch. So maybe we'll watch a little bit more than today. So anyway, but did you know that until we get those new ARM chips, there's an actual exploit to sideload apps that are not on the App Store for iOS directly onto your iPhone. And it comes from an unusual place. So yeah, this is, I'm going to go into this. Hopefully everything will work. If not, I'll only do one part of this. This is FetLife for iOS. And FetLife, for all those who don't know, and hopefully we don't, I say demonetize, like we actually get monetized for this, because one, the contract is weird for Twitch. Two, fuck commercials. That's why we don't monetize our stuff, although there will be ways to donate to us in the future, so do look out for that. But FetLife is like, it's like a Facebook for kinky fetish people. Let's put it that way, in the most PG way. And they do have a phone app for them. And Android, it's not on the Google Play Store, but just kind of like Fortnite and a bunch of other things, you could just download the direct APK directly to your phone. So how did they get it onto iOS? Because obviously Apple will never allow this app. Well, the reason why, there's this GitHub for it. And we don't have that pinned to our GitHub, because if you're on Twitch, you can scroll down and you can see our GitHub right there, and we have some things pinned. We don't have this on there. We will pin it during the meeting. What do you call it? There is a whole methodology basically exploiting Xcode and the developer tools that are pre-baked into iOS, and actually the more modern your phone is, the more the exploit works better. It's done in Swift, but, you know, Apple. So, but there's a way to exploit that in order not just to sideload this app, but a bunch of other... Oh, okay, you have Doxers. It's been a long time since I've been on that website. As a participant or doing recon? It's up to you if you want to answer that in chat, but just letting you know. So not only can you load this, but technically if you can use this same exploit with a wrapper, you can load all sorts of stuff. In fact, I believe they've actually made an unofficial iOS store using this method that then just basically puts their foot in the door and allows all these other illegal, non-authorized applications to come in. Yeah, a little bit column A, column B. That's how I know you're part of DC201 and you're a real fan there, DC201. And I hope I pronounced your username correctly. So I'm going to be talking about that. Now, ideally, I would like to start off on the computer and end up on an actual phone and show you. Worst comes to worst, I might show you on the computer and then show the finished process on the phone, because I don't have an iOS or an iPhone. I mean, there's ways around that, but I'll see it. I might be able to borrow a friend's. If not, I'll just show the browser side, the desktop side of it. But I'm going to show you how you can slide into the DMs, other applications by using the official FetLife app as an example. And finally, and this is the real reason why we wanted to do this meeting. This guy, you probably don't know this, but so he used to live with us for a while, and just because of complications with COVID, he couldn't live here currently. But he's one of my longtime friends, met him at NYC 2600. It's pronounced Neo. His full handle is technically Neo Amsterdam, but, you know, shorthand for Neo and something Matrix reference. And it's spelled XIO. And you can find him on Twitter at XIONYC, because I don't think he has a website. Actually, that's a good question, XIO. Does he still have this at .nyc? No, nothing's come up. Okay, so that website is probably dead. But if you think NCommander's into old arbitrary computers, first of all, Neo himself is an old arbitrary computer. We love him, and that's what he is. Two is that he knows a lot and does a lot, and we've always wanted him to show up on a HACK ALT NCOMMANDER so both of them could bounce ideas off of each other. Maybe someday. But we're going to try... Now, this is the talk that we don't know if it's going to happen or not because it depends on the circumstances, but he's going to try to do something because we've been talking about this for months. That's why we wanted to do this theme and to do it in September. Is a talk titled Old Man Yells at iCloud. And if you have never been to our December meetings, in December we usually put NCommander and have him rant about a topic for so long that our venue shuts down. Like, he will literally just rage rant for so long that, like, the time's up and they're closing the lights and unpulling the plugs and putting the lock on the doors. We want to end this the same way on the live stream, where they're live or pre-recorded. Our friend Neo, local NY... I'm not sure if he's a member. I believe he is, or at least an honorary member at this point. But, you know, alumni, a major person here and a good friend. And he is going to rant about everything Apple from their inception to now, when the terribleness in the future, everything from why Newton was, because he loves these things, why Apple Newton was amazing, and how dare Apple cancel Newton and not incorporate any of its ideas, and the very few ideas, as he says, that he incorporates, they've done it really terribly, and he's going to talk more about that, and Apple's lack of documentation, and how nothing works in the spinning beach ball of death, and blah, blah, blah. He's going to cranky con the F out of Apple. Like, it's like, we're going to try to aim for an hour, but he's just going to go on and on and on, and then probably Cell and NCommander making comments are not going to help with that either. And so either one of two things are going to happen. He's going to rant so long that he's going to go past the stream's deadline, and then we're going to shut the stream down, or he's going to rant for so long that he's going to turn beet red, and then one of his blood vessels bursts, and there'll be a shoot of blood, and then you'll see him slump over and pass out, and which is fine, because all we need to do is just put some Cafe Bustelo under his nose, like the way that you do smelling salts, and he'll pop back up. But by that point, we'll cut off the stream. So that's basically what our what it's going to look like here. We're going to have an awesome intro to Mac Malware and sort of the history of it and where it's going by Thomas Reed, and then by Warjek, hope I pronounced his name right. He's going to talk about specific exploit with XPC and Mac OS. Mr. McMacarite's going to talk about Apple gaming. NCommander's going to break down Macintosh Js. I'm going to be talking about how you use sideload iOS apps. And then Neo is just going to rant about terribleness about Apple till he dies. Now, in addition to that, which is why we're co-opting that hashtag, as you probably know, because it's the internet and the cult of Mac never shuts up, there is going to be an Apple event on September 15th. Now, from what we understand, there's not going to be a new iPhone or anything. This is supposedly what's been said. It's going to be about other products and services. But just because, you know, we have been screwing up with the live streams, and we haven't done this in a while, we are going to live stream, and for our time it will be 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on September 15th. We're going to watch. We're going to do a little pre-thing, make some predictions, talk about a chat. Then we're going to watch and peanut gallery. We're going to Mystery Science Theater 3000, Waldorf and Statler, the Apple event, and then talk about whatever they talk about afterwards. And we don't expect them to get into like hardcore coding about like the way Metal works or their APIs and stuff. However, we just thought it would be a fun event to talk about because it is coming up, and it just so happens that Apple decided to do this on the same week as us. So not only do we have a live stream where we can heckle them, but then constantly advertise with their own hashtag that let's see. It's going to be, what day is the 15th? I forget, because I'm dumb. Yeah, that 3 days later, we're going to talk about how you hack the shit out of Apple. And we're going to co-op their own promotions just to do that. So that's going to be fun. So let's get this garbage off of our screen, and we're gonna watch some videos. So let's go to this. I forgot to bring up this website earlier. The previous two speakers, I found them out through this amazing group. And I originally wanted to bring Patrick Wardle on, but he's been super busy. He loves our stuff, though, apparently. They're called Objective-C. It's a play on word that a lot of Mac stuff, particularly early Mac stuff, was programmed in Objective-C, the letter C, so they're making that joke. And really, they're the only group I can think of in what they do. They're basically a bunch of Mac fanatics who are really good engineers and security professionals, as well as just security hobbyists like ourselves. And they do two things. One, they have a huge database of malware. Now, obviously, I'm not going to download these, even though I'm running terrible Windows right now. But they have a huge list of malware and info about them, and they have articles, and you can download the code and dissect them, and they have all that here. The other thing that they've done is they have made free tools that you can download for your Mac about different for different things, such as a firewall, things to prevent like Task Explorer, key signing systems, ransomware, camera blockers, etc. And I can't bring it up now because they don't have the link, but actually, let's try to bring this up. They run their own convention called, and actually, is there a V3? There we go. Called Objective by the Sea. It's in Hawaii because, you know, I can't think of any more illustrious elite place for Apple stuff in Hawaii. And apparently the way they do this convention is as long as you can make it to Hawaii and you click the registration button, the registration's free. It's just travel to Hawaii if you're not from Hawaii. But yeah, they have their own conventions. You can see Thomas Reed's right there. He spoke earlier. So a lot of the people I reached out to, I found out through Objective-C and their convention Objective by the Sea. Hello, Manjot. Nice to see you. I will say, just because this is a special stream, if you stick around at the end of the stream in like an hour or so, I'm going to try to distribute some of the lemons that we have. We normally do that for Crypto Barons, but that'd be cool. And Manjot, if you like the content that we have on our stream, you can hit us on follow on DLive. If you want to send us some lemons, either sending lemons, ice cream, diamonds, ninjas, or following us, we'll see the pop-up on our stream, and we will greatly thank you for it. We just got, did that show up? We got, that the sound happened. Yes, the Hack the Planet. I think the clip was off. I'll have to recheck that again, but thank you for following us, Manjot. I appreciate that very much. So yeah, so we're gonna watch a couple of videos based on the amazing people by Objective-C, and like I said, Objective-C is run by a person named Patrick Wardle, and his last name's, not to make fun of him, his last name sounds like a Pokemon. Like, was that Pokemon called Wartortle or something? I love it. But he actually had a big talk at DEFCON this year, at DEFCON Safe Mode, about a new Mac exploit. So we're going to watch that. It's pretty short for the type of the videos we play. And let's see what Mr. Patrick Wardle from Objective-C has to say.
Aloha and welcome to my talk, Office Drama on macOS. My name is Patrick Wardle. I am a principal security researcher at Jamf and also the creator of the Mac security website and tool suite, Objective-C. So today we're going to be talking about malicious Office documents on macOS. First, we're going to detail recent attacks targeting Mac users, attacks that leveraged macro-laced documents. Then we'll discuss methods of analyzing these attacks. For example, how to extract the embedded macros, and also how to analyze the document payloads. As the current attacks are kind of lame, somewhat constrained, for example, by the Sandbox, I wanted to dig into this a little more, and we'll talk today about a new exploit chain that combines what was at the time a handful of 0 days to bypass the Sandbox and Apple's latest security mechanisms. We'll end by discussing generic methods to detect and thwart some of these attacks. All right, so let's dive in. We're going to start by looking at recent macro-based attacks targeting Mac users. Now, first, you might be wondering, what is a macro? Well, I've added the official Microsoft documentation on the slide, but in short, a macro is embedded executable code in Microsoft Office documents. In other words, it allows one, as I mentioned, to add executable code into a file. So as we can see on the slide, what I've done is I've inserted a macro
Sorry, that was a mistake, my bad.
Word document that will display a pop-up that says "Hello World." Now, we'll talk about this more later in the talk, but since I placed this code within the auto-open subroutine, if the user has enabled macro, this code will be automatically executed anytime they open the document. Now, from a security point of view, you might be thinking, this sounds like a horrible idea. And you're right. Placing executable code within documents, really just a terrible idea, which attackers have abused for years. In fact, the infamous Melissa virus, which was around all the way back in 1999, you guessed it, was a macro virus. Now, to be fair, Microsoft has added some mitigations, for example, alerts and sandboxing, but as we'll see, this has not fully mitigated the threat. So traditionally, these macro-based attacks have targeted Microsoft Windows systems due to two main reasons. First, macros are a Microsoft creation and only work in Microsoft products. That is, they're not going to work in Apple's Office apps such as Pages or Numbers. And then Windows computers, especially in the past, were far more prevalent, especially in the enterprise. Now, this is definitely changing. We're seeing a lot more Macs, especially in the startup scene and also in the enterprise as well. And so in short, there are more Macs, and a lot of them are running these Microsoft Office products, which means there's just more targets for hackers. So now let's take a look at some recent attacks targeting Mac users, attacks that leverage macro-laced documents. So first in this section, we're going to look at these at a high level. In the next section, though, we're going to dive into discussing exactly how to extract and analyze the payload of these malicious documents. So we're going to start in 2017. Here we have a document that appears to be about Trump's unfortunate election victory. If the user, though, went to open this document and clicked allow on the enabled macro alert, the system would become infected.
We are from New Jersey.
A malicious document containing malicious macros. Moving on to 2018, we have a document that appears to be about Bitcoin, which was a very hot, trendy topic at the time. Again, if the user opens the document and allows macros to run, the system is owned. Now, this document is interesting, and we'll dig into this more shortly, but the most interesting aspect of this attack was that the embedded exploit code contained the ability to actually bypass Microsoft Office's Sandbox. Moving on to 2019, we have a document from the prolific Lazarus APT group, which is normally associated with North Korea. This is interesting because we're actually now seeing APT groups jump on the, hey, let's target Mac OS via macros bandwagon. Again, if the user opens the document and clicks allow, the system will be owned. All right, so now let's talk about methods of analyzing these malicious documents, showing exactly how to extract embedded macros and how to analyze both the macro code and any embedded payloads. First, we need to be able to extract the embedded macro code. Now, the details of the file format of Microsoft Office documents is kind of beyond the scope of this talk, but the good news is you really don't have to even worry about that. Turns out there are some really great tools that are able to, if given an Office document with macros, contributively extract those macros. And that's really basically all we care about. My favorite is a tool suite called OLE Tools from GitHub. So we can see on the slide, we downloaded the package and installed it, and then we execute the OLE VBA command with the -c parameter, passing in the document which we suspect has embedded macros that we want to analyze. And the OLE VBA tool will then parse the document and dump any embedded macros to standard out. There's also various online sites where you can upload a document. The website will then do the analysis and extract any macro code. Now, we want to understand exactly what these malicious macros are doing. So let's briefly return to the documents that we discussed in the first part of the talk, and for each of these, look at exactly what the malicious macro code is doing. So again, starting at the one from 2018, we can use the OLE VBA tool to extract the macros. And I've cleaned up the macros a little bit and placed them on the screen. So we can see on the slide, there is a subroutine called Fisher that is invoked via the auto-open method. The auto-open method is a Microsoft API, and as its name implies, any code placed within this API will be automatically executed if and only if the user has enabled macros when opening the document. So if we assume the user has clicked allow to the embedded macros, let's look at what the Fisher subroutine does. Again, as it will be automatically executed each time the document is opened. So the first thing it does is it builds a base64 encoded string, and then it decodes and executes that via Python. If we manually decode this string, we can see it's Python code, which is unsurprising as it's passing it to Python to execute. So what is this Python code does? Well, first thing it does is it checks to see if popular security products, for example, Little Snitch, is running. And then it downloads a second stage payload from securitychecking.org. It then decrypts this payload using RC4 and executes this. Now, this code might look familiar if you spend a lot of time kind of looking at these attacks, and that's because this payload is actually Empire, which is a well-known open source Python backdoor. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what is it downloading and executing as its second stage payload? Well, unfortunately, the command and control server was offline at the time I did this analysis, but it's likely that it's simply Empire's second stage payload, which gives attackers full access over the infected system. Moving on to the Bitcoin document. Again, this one was from 2018. Using the OLE VBA tool, we can again extract the embedded macros. Interestingly, this also contains encoded Python and what appears to be an embedded property list. That's interesting. So let's take a closer look. First thing we do is we decode the Python. Since it's base64 encoded, it's very trivial to do. You can either do that via an online site that provides base64 decoding, or I just do it via the command line via a Python shell. Once the code is decoded, again, we can see that on the slide, it connects to an IP address, executes and downloads a second stage payload. It turns out this command and control server was still online during the time of my analysis, so I was actually able to get a copy of this second stage payload, which turned out to be Metasploit's Interpreter. Again, interesting to see attackers leveraging open source agents in second stage payload. Interpreter affords remote access of an infected system. Now, If you recall at the beginning of the talk, we kind of said that the most interesting thing about this particular document was its ability to escape out of Microsoft Office's sandbox. So, recent versions of Office run in a sandbox, which is good, and it means that if code is executed within the context of the process, for example, macro code executing within a Word document, it is highly contained. It's limited by what it can do. It's still in the sandbox. So it can't do things like persist the backdoor or even access the user's files. From a security point of view, this is very good. However, Mac security researcher Adam Chester found a very neat way to escape the sandbox and posted a guest blog about this on my Mac security website, Objective-C. In short, he found that Microsoft Office had a sandbox exception that was based on a faulty regex that would allow sandbox code to create a file anywhere on the system.
It's always
What
regex.
Adam was able to do was, via macro code running in the context of the sandbox, create a launch item that, on the next login, would be executed outside the context of the sandbox. And he used a property list in order to do that. So when I was analyzing this document, I said, okay, this code looks very familiar. And I, read Adam's blog and posted it on my site. And it turns out that the attackers had likely also read this blog and took Adam's code verbatim, 100% copy and paste, and embedded it into their Office document. So this would mean that on unpatched systems, they would be able to break out of the sandbox and cause more havoc, more mayhem. Finally, if we extract the embedded macro code from the Lazarus group document, we can see it's pretty basic. In this case, it's not even encoded. So, what does it do? Well, it simply downloads and executes a second stage persistent implant. That implant is named mt.dat and would give attackers persistent remote access to the system. However, this document did not have any sandbox escape code, which means if it was opened on a recent version of macOS, this part of the attack would fail because you can't obviously persist code from within the context of a sandbox. So that's an overview of recent macro-based attacks against macOS, which gave us, I think, a pretty thorough understanding of the status quo. Now let's talk about a new zero-click macro-based exploit chain. And you might be wondering, why should we do this? Well, all current macro-based attacks, in my opinion, are super lame. Let's list the ways. First, for any of these attacks, when the user goes to open the document, there's a huge alert warning them that this document contains macros, and they probably should not allow them. The user basically has to click Enable. Most won't, which means these attacks will fail immediately out of the box. Macro code will never even be run. Also, as Microsoft has now patched Adam's sandbox escape bug, all the attacks remain sandbox. Again, means even if the user does enable the macro code, they're incredibly limited about what they can do. They can't persist code or access user files. And then finally, on macOS Catalina, the most recent version of macOS, Apple has really upped the bar and introduced some new security mechanisms, such as notarization, which means the second stage payloads may not necessarily be even allowed to execute by the system. So again, the current attacks, my opinion, basically useless. Now, whenever companies such as Microsoft or Apple patch stuff or implement new security mechanisms, I like to poke on that, because often they do so incorrectly, insufficiently. So let's walk through now this kind of zero-click exploit chain. So the exploit starts with a really neat bug that was found a while ago by two security researchers and then kind of improved upon by other researchers at CERT. So this first bug is not mine. What these researchers found was that even if macros are turned off, they could create a document that contained macros that would be automatically executed with no alerts, no prompts. That's hot. How do they do this? By abusing an incredibly old Microsoft file format called SYLK files. How old? Like from the 1980s, before I was even born. And they also used a macro language not written in VBA, but something called XLM. Not XML, XLM. Now, Microsoft loves to support old file formats for compatibility reasons. So, yeah, these old file formats still work even in recent versions, specifically in Excel. So as I mentioned, the researchers found that they could create these XLM macros in these SYLK file formats that would be automatically executed, ironically, if the user had set never run macros to true. So the researchers published some great details about these older formats and some of their findings. So if you're interested, I've posted a link on the slide to their very thorough technical write-ups. So what I did was I created a simple proof of concept based on their code. We'll see a malicious document is downloaded from the internet, and when it is opened, calc is automatically executed. Now, the main takeaway from here is that there are no macro alerts, right? No prompts, nothing. Just as soon as the document is opened, calculator pops. Now, that's well and good, but as we noted on recent versions of Microsoft Office, the applications are sandboxed, meaning, sure, we can pop calculator, and that's neat for a demo, but we can't persist a backdoor, we can't access the user's files. This is the point of a sandbox. It contains malicious code, even if such code finds a way to execute. So, in short, we need a new sandbox escape in order to do any real damage. So I started by looking at Microsoft's patch for Adam's bug, and I noticed that they actually didn't fix the faulty regex. Instead, they just simply blocked certain locations, such as the launch agent directory, which is where Adam's proof of concept created a launch agent, which on the next login would be executed outside the context of the sandbox. So this means we can create arbitrary files as long as they start with $$, meaning they conform to this faulty regex almost anywhere. Again, almost anywhere because Microsoft added some specific locations that they blocked. Now, our goal, of course, is to execute something outside the sandbox so we can persist and do evil things. We just noted we can write specially named files to arbitrary locations from macro code that's running within the context of the sandbox, as Microsoft didn't fully patch that. Also, it turns out in the sandbox, we can both download and execute scripts, as we can see in the process monitor on the slide. Now, these scripts themselves will be sandboxed, right? They're children of a sandbox process, which means themselves are also sandboxed. But that's still a start, right? We can execute, for example, Python scripts, which gives us a very extensible programming language to perhaps do some sorts of evil things. So, via a Python script, which we, again, download and execute within the sandbox, we can create something called a login item. Now, login items are automatically executed the next time the user logs in, and since it started by Mac OS instead of us via the sandbox, it's not going to be sandbox. So when the user's logging in, Mac OS goes and looks at the register login items and just executes and starts all of them. Again, there's no tie back to the Microsoft Office, macro code, sandbox, nothing. So that means this will be executed outside the context of the sandbox. To confirm, we can persist terminal.app. Sure enough, when we re-log in, terminal is executed, and if we look at it in Activity Monitor, we can see that it runs outside the sandbox. So this is good, right? We now have a way to bypass the sandbox, but unfortunately we run smack into Catalina's new security mechanisms, which are file quarantines and new notarization requirements. In a nutshell, notarization basically says, hey, Apple has to bless the file before it's run. Obviously, Apple's not going to bless our backdoor, so even if we go and persist the backdoor, as a login item, macOS will simply refuse to execute it because unfortunately it is not blessed. It is not notarized. Ugh, this is a bummer. And so what do we do, right? We got to figure out a way to bypass now quarantine and notarization. Now, hope is not lost, right? This is 2020, things look bleak, but we gotta stay optimistic, especially when we are looking and developing exploits. Because if, and this is a big if we can create a launch agent, we can specify arguments and persist a persistent interactive non-sandbox reverse shell via bash. Now, this is a big if, but again, there's a few kind of takeaways here. First, being able to specify arguments is huge. And then also, if we can specify or persist rather an interactive shell, it's going to be running outside the sandbox, which is going to do things like allow us to remove quarantine attributes, which means that notarization checks will not even be performed. This would be great. But recall that Microsoft's patch for Adam's bug explicitly blocks the creation of launch agents. Bummer. So we kind of have like all these pieces, but we just can't quite put them together. Frustrating. So we can escape the sandbox via a login item, but login items can't take arguments, and they also can't be a random binary because notarization will block it. So in other words, all we can do is persist an Apple binary, again, with no arguments. And sure, we can bypass notarization by the creation of a launch agent, but we can't create one from the sandbox due to Microsoft's partial patch. So, in other words, what we need is a way for the system, or for an Apple binary with no arguments, is to create a launch agent for us. This is where things get beautiful. So, I had a random idea. What happens if you create a login item that is not a binary or an application? Like, what happens if you persist a zip file? How does the system handle that? Again, recall we can create these login items from the sandbox. They can't take arguments and they can't be random binaries, but what happens if we persist a zip file, right? Well, it turns out on login, the file's default handler will be invoked, which for a zip file, macOS will automatically execute the Apple's archive utility to unzip the file. Basically says, okay, this is not an executable, so I'm going to invoke the handler. And in this case, it's the archive utility because we persisted.
Hey,
zip
Patel,
file,
we're just watching this talk from DEFCON Safe Mode.
Remember, we want to create a launch agent. But due to Microsoft's recent patch, we cannot directly write to the user's launch agent directory. But if it doesn't exist, which on a default version of macOS it does not, we can drop the zip file one directory up in the user's library directory. This is allowed from the sandbox. So now we can place a zip file in the library directory, and we can persist this as a login item. So we're making progress. So what do we put in the zip file? A directory named launch agents. And in that, a launch agent property list. So now when we persist this zip file as a login item, on next login, the archive utility will automatically be invoked. This is allowed because it's an Apple sign process, and it will run outside the context of the sandbox, which means it can do things like unzip our file and create the launch agent directory and our launch agent property list for us. That is awesome. So this completes the full exploit chain. The user starts by opening this SLK file containing the XLM macro, which will execute automatically. Again, no alert, they just open the document. This downloads and persists the specially crafted zip file as a login item. On next login, the archive utility will be automatically invoked, and in the background will extract this zip file, thereby creating a launch agent for us. And on next login, the login agent will be automatically executed with our arguments, which we can put in the property list, and will execute our bash-based interactive backdoor. So this bash backdoor runs outside the sandbox, meaning it can download and unquarantine files. unquarantined files are not constrained by Apple's notarization requirements. So we have this interactive shell outside of the sandbox. What do? Well, we decided to persist something. And I thought it would be extra funny to persist a repurposed, clearly not notarized version of Windtail. And you can see on the slide, when I finally got this all working in the Slack channel at work, I was clearly pretty stoked. All right, so let's now talk, kind of shift gears and talk about defending against these attacks and some generic methods of detection. First thing, as a responsible security researcher, I reported all these vulnerabilities to Microsoft and Apple. Microsoft responded and said, this is a known issue on the Apple side. And I was like, well, yeah, because I told Apple as well. So I have no idea what Microsoft did. No CVE, no bug bounty. Bummer. Apple said, thank you for your reports, and then nothing. I waited a long time and checked back in with Apple, and they said, oh yeah, we patched that back in 10.15.3. Again, no CVE, no bug bounty, classic Cupertino. Let's talk briefly, though, about how to detect these attacks and perhaps other Mac malware as well. So the first thing let's talk about is process monitoring, leveraging Apple's new endpoint security framework. It turns out it's pretty easy to create a process monitor to detect something I call suspicious children. Suspicious children processes. As we can see on the slide, we can now detect when an Office application, for example, Excel, spawns a child process that is, well, suspicious. So regardless of the reason, of the exploit, if it was a macro, buffer overflow, if you see Excel spawning curl and then Python, that's bad news. Something is amiss. We can also detect a wide range of attacks, including the exploit chain we just talked about this, by monitoring the file system for persistence. Persistence is just the way that malware or perhaps an exploit chain escapes out of the sandbox or ensures that it's automatically re-executed when the system is rebooted or the user re-logs in. So again, we can use Apple's new endpoint security framework, and we can monitor for files specifically related for ones to persistence. So here, for example, on the slide, we can detect now that a login item was created that does not point to an application or a binary, which is normally the case when a login item is created, but instead to a zip file. This is a huge red flag and kind of shows that our exploit is executing. So at Jamf, we implement such monitoring logic in a framework we call MonitorKit. We then feed that monitoring data, as well as our analytics and rules, into Apple's game logic engine for evaluation. This gives us a powerful endpoint detection capability, uniquely tailored for macOS. And kind of neat, not to really brag, but based on our current rules, we were actually able to detect this exploit chain with no a priori knowledge. Pretty neat. All right, so let's wrap everything up. So today we kind of talked about the current state of affairs in the land of macro-based attacks. And we showed that they are becoming more and more popular in the sense of targeting specifically macOS users. But luckily, current attacks are rather lame. However, we should not be lulled into a sense of complacency because it showed us pretty easy to actually create a zero-click exploit chain that, if the user would open a document, would both escape the sandbox and bypass all of Apple's recent security mechanisms. Again, at the time, on a fully patched macOS system. However, we ended by showing that by leveraging Apple's new endpoint security framework, we can generically detect these and other attacks. I briefly want to thank a variety of people. First and foremost, you all for virtually attending my talk. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy. Also to Jamf for putting up with my many shenanigans, and also all the amazing companies that support Objective-C. Oh, and one more thing. Today I am announcing my new book, The Art of Mac Malware Analysis. my dog is very excited about it as well. I've published the first part online at taumm.org, and the rest of the chapters will be published shortly as well, all 100% free. Sharing is caring. So, if you're interested in learning more about Mac malware, exploits, persistence, debuggers, disassembling, check out the site. So again, that is a wrap. Thank you so much for attending my talk.
Okay, so that was Patrick Wardle, one of the main people at Objective-C, talking about the exploit. It's kind of a weird theme that he had there, where it's, I mean, technically Apple should be on the alert actively patching for this, but he's basically kind of making the argument that you'd imagine a Mac fan would make of like, oh, the reason why we have this exploit is because of Windows, although to be fair, that's also a lot of other exploits in Linux because of Microsoft and, yeah, all of that. But I thought that was a cool look, especially I like how, which is what you usually do in Windows hacking, which is Microsoft's absolute obsession because of how cross-eyed, stupid people's business and official information technology people are about legacy systems, how they're exploiting, how Microsoft basically can run everything going all the way back to the Stone Age against itself in order to do privilege escalation. That's kind of hilarious right there. But someone earlier, Patel, just came in. Hey, Patel, I don't know if you're still on here, and I don't know if you follow us on YouTube, but if you do, a notification will pop up, and I'll cheer you on. If you're also on Twitch or DLive and you want to follow us, you can do so too. Now, here's the thing I'm going to debate about. I normally had 2 more videos. I'm debating about playing the second one because kind of like I think Ward already covered everything. So you know what? I'll play the Evil Maid attack some other time. But in the interest of time, and because I want to raid other people's streams and do the DLive distribution, we're going to watch one last video because, as I said, and also for you those who are tuning in, I am SidePocket. I'm one of the 2 co-founders of DEFCON 201. We are a computer hacker hobbyist group in Jersey City, New Jersey, in the Hudson County area. You can go to our website at defcon201.org, as well as our, not my dick, but our Twitter at defcon201nj, and then we're on defcon 201 and mostly everything else on hostux.social, which is a Mastodon, Instagram, GitHub, all of that. And to note, Lulu, which is the firewall from Objective-C for Mac. So if you're on a Mac, you have a firewall. That's way better than Apple's own proprietary firewall, and it's open source. If you are on Twitch and you scroll down to our GitHub thing, we have that pinned there, so you can click on that, look at the code for that, and download it. If you are not on there, I can actually put our GitHub on here, so that should be https www.github.com/defcon201, and that's our GitHub, and we have our website's code up there and stuff like that. So we're going to play one last video, and as I said, the main reason why we did the live stream is because normally there is an awesome show that takes place tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time called Hack ALT NCOMMANDER with our friend NCOMMANDER who likes dissecting old software, and next week on September 18th, which is next Friday on September 18th, which is our DEFCON 201 meeting for September. It's all going to be Mac themed, and he is going to dissect Macintosh Js and talk a bit about like Macintosh 8.1 and how they managed to just squeeze it into Java Electron. So normally he would be doing that, unfortunately, because of a bunch of stuff, he wasn't unable to do so tonight. So I find it fitting that we're going to end it with one of his videos. He does have a YouTube channel. I'm going to post that at the end. And it's a 17-minute video about some crazy topic. Let me go look at it. About running DOS and Windows software without a hard drive from NetWare. So you probably, if you've checked out his past episodes, he's been dealing a lot with just making NetWare Novell do things it was never supposed to do and trying to make it do things that it's supposed to do that doesn't work anymore. So I'm going to air this. I'm actually going to take the cam off because I have to run off, do some things. I'll come back on the cam, say goodbye, and then we will see you tomorrow on G.I. Jack's show, Archfile Linux Perspective, at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which he will be there for streaming that. So without further ado, I'm going to F off for 17 minutes, and you're going to watch probably one of the things that NCommander would probably be talking about if he was conscious and not dead enough to be on the stream. So for all the NCommander fans out there who love to watch Hack Alt NCommander, I hope you enjoy this video from our friend and DEFCON 201 member.
For those of us who love vintage computing, many of us remember some of the more iconic programs of the 80s and 90s. For example, I have plenty of fond memories playing Doom and Duke Nukem 3D. I still remember seeing Wordperfect and Lotus 123 being at the forefront of business software, and of course, I still remember the magic moment the first time I beat Solitaire. That being said, one thing I wish I could forget was the constant fight for hard drive space. After all, every application I just listed needed its own bit of the C drive. One of my first computers was a hand-me-down Compact Desk Pro with a very small hard disk, and it was a constant battle of either deleting programs, tempting fate with doublespace, or trying your luck with external storage. That being said, ever since my last video on Novell NetWare, I've had a lingering question in my mind. For a modern vintage enthusiast, is it realistic that we could just ditch the hard disk entirely? Well, after finding this bit of code on the internet, I was inspired to find out. So, as usual, this is your host NCommander, and today some experimentation is required. I wouldn't be surprised if a large majority of folks do not recognize the program running on screen. It's Novell's NetWare Ready firmware for AMD network cards. That probably means nothing to the vast majority of folks, so let me break it down. If we look here at a picture of an actual AMD PC net card, you might notice this large chip socket here. This is a spot for a special firmware chip called an option ROM. Option ROMs are special programs designed to modify how a PC starts up. In this case, I was able to find a binary copy of the option ROM for AMD PC net cards, and with a little bit of effort, I was able to get it to load within Nukem. Of course, I still need to explain what NetWare Ready actually means. In short, it's a way to boot a computer without a floppy disk or a hard disk. For those familiar with modern networking, this might sound a lot like PXE. PXE, short for Pre-Boot Execution Environment, is the modern way of starting a PC from a network. However, PXE is a relatively recent development, having only been standardized in 1999. Before PXE, we had RPL, or Remote Program Load. Ready Start is merely Novell's branding for the RPL protocol. While there are significant technical differences between PXE and RPL, the largest is that RPL is capable of starting most variants of DOS directly as well as OS/2. To actually get started though, we need an RPL server of some sort. Quite a few networking solutions offer RPL, and the splash screen seen in Ready Start shows a large list of early 90s network software that we could potentially use. However, given that NetWare inspired this project, it seems more than fitting that we should use it. While we watch NetWare install, it's a good opportunity to talk about how we're going to test this. In truth, I actually had the RPL firmware working some time ago, but I felt that just doing a test between two VMs really wouldn't be an indication of how well this would work in reality. That changed when I found this Kingston PCM CIA 10 megabit Ethernet card for my ThinkPad. This gives us an opportunity to both demonstrate our applications in a VM and how they'd also perform on a period correct network. This led to a rather crazy project of mine. Let's assemble a small office NetWare network, put all the essential apps on the NetWare server, and then really put it to the test. As seen in this diagram, we're building a 4-machine network. At the center, we have Odyssey 2 as our NetWare server. As we've seen before, we need a dedicated machine to do system administration. In this case, that's Discovery. Meanwhile, our client systems are Europa, which is a Cum instance booting via RPL, and finally TMA1, which is our real-life ThinkPad 380D. I'll put the machine name in the corner of the video to help keep everything clear on screen. This gives us the advantage of both being able to experience ideal circumstances and get a real-life idea of what this would be like. Let's get down and dirty with getting things installed. As with any NetWare installation, proper configuration begins with writing the rather extensive autoexec.ncf, which is what you now see on screen. I have uploaded an annotated version of this file for those who are interested. The link is in the description. The biggest takeaway from this, though, is the bind RPL lines, which tells NetWare which interface we want to enable remote booting from. If we now boot our RPL machine, we now get a new message, netdos.sys not found. In the NetWare system folder, we have this utility DOSGen. DOSGen reads a literal floppy disk and then creates the netdos.sys file in the current working directory. If we format a normal floppy disk as a DOS boot disk, switch to the login folder, and then run DOSGen, it succeeds. If we now reboot Europa, we can now see DOS loading over the network via RPL. This works because RPL is essentially faking a read-only floppy disk. Whatever is in NetOS is loaded up on our client machine. For example, if I create a test autoexec.bat and then rerun DOSGen, we can see that change after a reboot. Up to this point, I've been following the instructions in NetWare's DOS workstation manual, but I hit something of a stumbling block. The DOS workstation guide specifically states that you're supposed to DOSGen a workstation boot disk. What it doesn't tell you is how to make that. From the diagrams, though, I can see some of the files that should be on the disk. What I inferred after some trial and error is I need to copy the core parts of the NetWare client, write net.config, and then set autoexec.bat and config.sys correctly. After more than a few failed attempts, I ended up with a floppy disk image that could successfully start DOS and attach itself to Odyssey 2. I could even log in. I'd say I was home free, but I wasn't. After running DOSGen on my known working network boot disk, I had a rather unfortunate problem of the system hanging. A lot of experimentation showed that the moment that the PCNet driver was loaded, the RPL firmware glitched out and reset the network card. The end result was that DOS would hang because Ready Start or its IPX driver was no longer available. I tried various fixes and went searching through the annals of Usenet to try and figure out what was going on. What I learned is that this type of crash appears to have been fairly common. The root cause appears to be due to the fact that the network client is modular in nature and that the network driver must be loaded before the IPX stack. This problem occurs in both NetWare's official drivers like their NE2000 driver and add-on drivers like the PCNet driver I was using. Various solutions such as installing an updated rboot and various server-side patches were tried with no avail. The most common solution was to simply use the older monolithic drivers from NetWare 2.0, which appeared to be immune to this problem. That would have been great if I had a driver from that era. Finally, I managed to find one post that had figured out a workaround. Create a RAM disk and then load the client from that. Most versions of DOS ship with ramdrive.sys, a simple device driver that creates a blank RAM disk on startup. Furthermore, DOS supports relocating command.com after start by using the comspec environmental variable. After a lot of filling, I was able to come up with a set of batch files that create a RAM disk, copy the boot files to it, and then initializes the network successfully. As seen by the boot messages, Europa has now made first contact with Odyssey 2. For those who want to try this at home, the necessary batch scripts and instructions are linked in the description. The next step was to bring the Tycho magnetic anomaly up to speed with this plan. Unfortunately, despite my best efforts, I have yet to find a way to port or otherwise run an RPL boot ROM on this machine. Easy Setup does list network boot as an option, but it only supports a token ring adapter of some sort. That being said, a boot disk was entirely practical. As it turns out, all I needed to do was take the existing DOS-gen disk and replace the PC net driver, and we're good to go. Unfortunately, removing the hard disk from this ThinkPad is exceptionally difficult and not something I can easily do at this time. To simulate a diskless environment though, I decided to simply delete the DOS partition from the hard disk. Perhaps in the future, I'll do a follow-up of a proper diskless setup on real hardware, but for the moment, this is the best I can do. Switching back to our administration machine, let's do a bit of basic setup. The first thing we need to do is create a proper user and figure out how to lay everything out. Novell doesn't provide any hard and fast rules on how to set up users or networked applications. As I've shown before, the most Novell gives as far as guidance are these worksheets in the installation manual. The only truly necessary component is that the syspublic folder, which contains most of the netware utilities, needs to be assigned to a drive letter. Beyond that, pretty much anything is fair game. That being said, there are some obvious considerations. As DOS normally assigns drive letters starting from A and going downward, it makes sense for us to start at Z and make our way up. That reduces the possibility of any sort of collision. First, let's get the obvious out of the way and map syspublic to Z. The next bit is also fairly simple. We still need the rest of DOS. We'll copy the DAWS 6.2 folder from Discovery and then map that folder read-only to drive letter Y. We'll then dedicate drive letter X to holding our applications, with each application being in a subdirectory. Furthermore, I decided that the user's home folder should be in L, as it's roughly in the middle of the alphabet and it's unlikely to cause a drive letter collision. While DAWS itself has no concept of users or home directories, by using consistently mapped drive letters, we can set sane defaults for applications and login scripts. With the planning out of the way, let's get DAWS and our login scripts sorted. During installation, I created dedicated volumes for data and users. Using Xcopy, I can simply copy the installed DAWS folder from Discovery in one single go. Likewise, our home folder is stored on user NCOMMANDER. The login script then becomes extremely straightforward to write, and we now have a basic DAWS system ready to go on Europa. Of course, we still need some actual applications to go along with this. With all the setup work done, let's start with the work stuff first. And by work, I mean Wordperfect 5.1. Wordperfect is one of the few DAWS applications that has a specific network install option. Since DAWS is normally a single user operating system, it's not uncommon for applications to have issues due to faulty assumptions, something that we will see later in this video. Rather notably, after a network installation, Wordperfect's behavior also changes. After installation, running WP causes this new prompt for the user to type in a 3-letter username. This is a feature of Wordperfect for keeping user settings separate. It is, however, irrelevant with the way we have the L drive set up. That being said, as expected, Wordperfect performs flawlessly over the network, so let's give that the big old stamp of approval. Next up is Lotus 123 version 2.4. 123 was one of the biggest killer apps and remained a mainstay of businesses until Excel would eventually push it out of the marketplace entirely. Unlike Wordperfect, 123 does not have a network option. In fact, I had considerable issues getting 123 to work at all, with it constantly getting stuck with broken display settings. Even after I got that resolved, it would constantly complain about read-only drives. A lot of trial and error showed that Lotus's configuration is split into what it calls sets, and I eventually stumbled upon the right settings to move its working directory to the L drive. While 123 didn't make it easy, I do have to give it the "it works" stamp. Now, I could sit here and do business software all day, but let's try something a bit more interesting. Games usually have to read resources across the network to load levels, art, and music. As such, I'm expecting some more interesting catastrophic failures from this test. Let's start with the smash hit of 1993, Doom. Here, we start running into problems. I was able to install Doom just fine as Supervisor, but I couldn't configure it properly. This is due to its folder being read-only. Changing the permissions to grant write access allowed setup to run just fine, and I was really impressed to see it running without issue on the ThinkPad over the network. That being said, there were some problems. On our emulated machine, Doom immediately hung. This doesn't appear to be a problem with the network or the fact that this is a diskless machine. In fact, it appears entirely due to broken sound emulation in CUME 4.2. I guess it goes to show that BitRaw and emulators is real. There isn't much demand to run DAWs, so things like Sound Blaster support suffer. That being said, it really is to NetWare's credit that this not only works, it's fully playable on a 10 megabit Ethernet connection. In that vein, I decided to try something a little more demanding, Duke Nukem 3D. Like Doom, I had to set its folder read-write, but it works too. I really have to give credit to NetWare here. Its client is both performant and seamless enough that this works without issue. Now, I could sit here all day and continue trying various DAWs applications, and if you guys have any suggestions, I'd be happy to do a follow-up, but there is something specific I wanted to try: Microsoft Windows. Windows 3.1 was the last 16-bit version of Windows that could easily exit back to DAWs, and it could simply be launched as an application. While Windows 95 could be loaded via RPL, it required a rather involved process to do so. If you do want to see me do diskless Windows 95, leave a comment below. Getting back to Windows 3.1, getting diskless operation to work was a little bit of trial and error. The first step is to do what's known as an administrative install as Supervisor. This launches Windows SEP as normal, but it just prompts for all 6 disks and never starts the graphical part of the installation. Instead, all the files are decompressed and installed to the Win32 folder. The next step is to log in as the NCommander user and run setup/n, which does the network installation part. Once again, installation prompts for a folder, but unlike the administrative install, this is for a user's individual settings. This process looks similar to the normal graphical installation, but it doesn't prompt for any disks. In theory, I should simply be able to type win, but it errored out when I tried it, with the given error message being that my NetWare shell was too old. Some searching turned up an archive.technet article which outlined how to fix this. Afterwards, we can simply start Windows just fine. A closer examination with File Manager shows a small number of files in Win32 and the rest of the files on the X drive. At this point, I think we can conclude that yes, Windows 3.1 can in fact be run without a hard disk, and yes, it does run on real hardware. As we reach the end of this video, it's time to draw some conclusions. In general, NetWare has been both rock solid and fast. However, we've also seen a lot on why it's important to test things on real hardware. Besides the Doom sound issue, CUME has had relatively poor network performance and notable lag. I don't know if this is an artifact of emulation or a problem with the RPL firmware itself. I do hope to acquire hardware capable of doing native RPL booting in the near future, so I may come back to this topic in a future video. That's all the time we have here today, so as usual, if you like this video, please like and subscribe. It really does make a huge difference for the channel. If you're interested in following my adventures in real time, feel free to follow me on Twitter or come join my Discord. Until the next time, this is NCommander, signing off. Bye bye.
And if we can get this going, ta-da! Yeah, I'm big again. That's what she said. That was the, there's the video skipped ahead. That was running DOS and Windows software without a hard drive from NetWare, and how he found out that was even emulated a lot more malleable than he thought. And again, normally NCommander is on earlier at 8 p.m. For HACK ALT NCOMMANDER. However, basically he had a bunch of issues today and wasn't able to stream, so what was I getting to? So we decided to do the special again. We already had stuff that we were going to announce anyhow. So if you are interested in his YouTube channel, I will post in the chat here. That's a link to his YouTube channel. And even though we call him NCommander, he often goes under the username Foss Firefighter, which is a bit of like an in-joke of a part of his life. But I also just posted in chat his Twitter, and earlier up ahead on that chat is the GitHub. So thank you for watching the special stream. Again, I apologize that NCOMMANDER couldn't make it for today's episode. I know we've been kind of going crazy trying to get streaming times, but I believe all of that is solved because tomorrow at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which you should totally go and check out, our other co-founder, G.I. Jack, is going to do his show called Archvile Linux Perspective, where he talks about Arch Linux, and a lot of times he likes to play games on Arch Linux, so he'll often show off games, and he's also made his own custom Arch Linux operating system variant called Ninja OS, which he could explain better than me. And let me actually just fix this video here real quick. I know we're about to end it, but I just want to just kind of just fix it just a little. That should be better. Okay, for the most part. So, yeah. So Archvile Linux Perspective with G.I. Jack's going to happen at 7 p.m. and he will make it on time and stream it because he's the reliable one. And then this Saturday we have Crypto Barons, which is my other show where I talk about blockchain technologies. Which, speaking of which, I'm going to go to DLive in a moment just to check on something. Blockchain technologies as technologies and coding, as opposed to like what do I call it? Like all the snake oil bull crap that you normally see. So that's I wonder why that didn't update. Let's refresh that. Maybe it went down in value. I have no idea. Huh. Okay. We have less lemons than we thought. That's unfortunate. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna figure out a channel to raid on Twitch. And that will be our stream. And also note that next week we're going to be doing two things. On 1 p.m. on the 15th, we are going to be doing the Apple event because basically next week's going to be nothing but Apple. To some people, unfortunately, it's going to be nothing but Apple. But what do you call it? I'm just seeing what we can raid here on Twitch. Not much, way late at night, so we're just gonna do woke because woke deserves it, because Black Lives Matter. I'm not. This is not the reason why I'm involved with that, because I hate human injustice in all of its forms. But I'm half black. I'm half black and half Polish. Remember earlier I said I was half Polish. The other half is African American, as they call it. And yes, thank you, Delta Demana. We'll be going in a moment here. I'm just trying to get to our raid manager here. So and we're gonna raid woke because you should be watching woke. Woke has it's not like what you usually hear with woke, where it's like with Twitter and stuff. They're a channel that basically compiles all of the activism that's been going on in with particularly the Black Lives Matter protests and the terrible militias who are supporting police brutality, as well as incompetent police themselves. And we just want to put out, not all police are incompetent, but apparently there's a lot of incompetent ones, and there's no real checks and balances for them. So yeah, it's kind of like people in InfoSec. They should all just go. But yeah, we're gonna go raid that if you're on Twitch, and so on the 15th, there's gonna be the Apple event at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're gonna Mystery Science Theater 3000, that crap. There's gonna be a short pre-show, and then we're gonna watch and comment on it, and then we're gonna express our thoughts afterwards. And it's just gonna be a casual, just me with the chat. And then September 18th, which is next Friday, is our meeting, and we will announce times for that late this Friday. But we will have a blog post, and our website will be updating the time schedule for that. And it's going to be all Apple themed. So shortly after the Apple event, which is why we get to co-op all their social media on this, we're going to be teaching about how to hack Apple products, whether it's, as we showed earlier, security vulnerabilities, cool retro hack dissections, iOS side channel loadings, and just ranting about Apple in general. So that's going to be really cool. So the next big dates, just again, tomorrow is Archvile Linux Perspective with G.I. Jack 7 p.m. Then this Saturday, Crypto Barons with me about blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies at 8 p.m. this Saturday. Then next Tuesday, if I remember correctly, that's September 15th at 1 p.m., we're going to watch the Apple event and watch Tim Apple peddle his walled garden. And then September 18th, we get to make fun of all that by having our normal meeting that will be Mac hacking themed. So thank you for watching this live stream, and hopefully at some point you will... NCommander should be at our meeting. If not, at some point Hack Alt NCommander will probably come on. We've been working with him. Hopefully he'll be able to visit tomorrow physically. That would be really cool, especially since some of the stuff that I know G.I. Jack's been doing. But thank you for watching the stream. If you are on Twitch, DLive, or YouTube, don't forget to hit that bell, click like, share, subscribe if you like this content and you want to know like tomorrow's show and our upcoming meeting next Friday and stuff like that. You will be alerted for that. Also, for streaming and you follow us, we see your name and there's a fun sound and we cheer you on and crap ourselves. If you're more interested about what we do at DEFCON 201, you can go to our website at defcon201.org, our Twitter at defcon201nj, and defcon 201 everywhere else, whether you're on Mastodon, Instagram, or GitHub. We also have an Onion, but we'll get to that in a future episode of Crypto Barons. So anyway, I'm SidePocket. I'm one of the two co-founders of DEFCON 201. Hack the Planet, Dirty Jersey represent, and thank you for watching this special stream. We'll see you, well, Jack will see you tomorrow, but we'll see you as a group in the very near future, and we hope to see you at our meeting at September 18th next Friday. Peace. And stay woke.